Building a gaming PC is pretty exciting stuff. You have your CPU, RAM, graphics card, among other components. But despite having a lot of choice of various components, most of these are going to be from three major companies. Firstly, Intel, which makes CPUs, and fairly recently also decently priced GPUs as well. Then we also have AMD, which makes some great CPUs and graphics cards with very good price to performance ratios. And of course, we can't forget Nvidia, which makes some of the best graphics cards you can buy, like the RTX 5090. But what would a gaming PC that used none of these companies even look like? How well would it perform in games? And is it even possible? Let's find out. Since the CPU is one of our main components in our gaming PC, let's start with that. In order to use a standard version of Windows, we need a CPU that supports the x86 architecture, and that is pretty much where our first problem lies. There are pretty much only two companies that make x86 CPUs. The first is Intel, and the second is AMD, neither of which we can actually use for this video. But luckily, there is a third, less well-known company that has a license to make x86 CPUs, VIA Technologies. So here's our first component, and you know it's going to be good when it comes in an RTX 3050 box. But let me tell you now that this is no RTX 3050. Inside the box, as shown by this sticker, we have a Zhaoxin KaiXian KX 7000 CPU. It's brand new and also an OEM part, hence why there's no retail packaging at all. It comes with an I/O shield, the CPU socket cover as the CPU is already pre-installed into the motherboard, and a SATA cable. On first look, the motherboard just appears to be any cheapish standard sized micro ATX board, but it's actually made by a very well-known brand. The CPU looks like a standard Intel LGA 1700 socket CPU, but by looking closer, we can see that this CPU says KX-7000/8. It's weird because when we take the CPU out, it literally just looks like a normal LGA 1700 CPU from the front and back. Even having a closer look at the socket, it looks exactly the same. I'm pretty sure, however, the pins are not wired the same, so an Intel CPU would not work in this motherboard, and vice versa. And I'm definitely not going to test it out, as this CPU and motherboard combo will set you back in the region of $500 US. Unlike most Zhaoxin processors, this CPU actually has pads and pins on the motherboard, so it's completely removable. Previous CPUs, like the KX6000, have been BGA soldered to the motherboard. So it's actually nice to see because it actually gives us more choice on which motherboard we can use, although there aren't actually many manufacturers making Zhaoxin socket motherboards anyway. Let's go ahead and install this CPU into our motherboard, which is the unbranded XC KX700M D4. This is actually made by ASUS, although they seem to act like they had nothing to do with the motherboard at all. There's absolutely no ASUS branding on the motherboard itself, but if you search up the name on Google, you will find a product page in ASUS's website with a single BIOS download. If that isn't proof enough that this is made by ASUS, then you can also see the ASUS LAN guard on the Ethernet ports, and it says ASUS on the MAC address as pointed out by PC Watch. Now I know that I said that VIA Technologies has an x86 license, but this isn't a VIA CPU. Or is it? Well, if we go back to 1988, there was a company founded by the name of Cyrix, by Tom Brightman and Jerry Rogers of Texas Instruments. Their first product was actually not even a CPU, but an x87 compatible maths coprocessor, pin compatible with the Intel 8387, called FastMath. Later on, however, they also made CPUs like the 486, the 5x86, the 6x86, which was actually a competitor to the Intel Pentium, and the Cyrix Media GX in 1996. But unlike AMD, they never actually had an x86 license, which meant Intel sued Cyrix. But the thing is, Cyrix never actually used Intel's designs. Instead, it reverse engineered to design their own independent processors. This in turn meant that Intel lost the case, and in the end Cyrix had the right to produce their own x86 designs in any foundry that held an Intel license. They also got an additional $12 million to settle the antitrust claims. In 1997, Cyrix then merged with National Semiconductor, and all the manufacturing was switched over to National Semiconductor instead of IBM. But by 1999, they couldn't even keep up with the likes of AMD and Intel, and they were running out of money quickly, so they sold Cyrix to VIA Technologies, a Taiwan company which actually started in the US. But by that time, Cyrix's design team was actually already completely gone. This meant that VIA Technologies now had an x86 license, but it also then decides to acquire SOTTR Technologies, which at the time was also making x86 chips. And this improves their x86 design capabilities, as they obviously needed a new design team. During this time, VIA makes a few CPUs, but in 2013, they enter into an agreement with the Shanghai municipal government to create a fabless semiconductor company called Zhaoxin. This means that Zhaoxin are also allowed to build x86 processors, which are mostly, if not all, manufactured by TSMC. So as we can see, through a series of acquisitions and joint ventures, Zhaoxin is able to make x86 processors, but their target consumer base is currently China only, and it will probably remain that way. China is actively trying to reduce its dependence on foreign hardware and software, making everything in-house, and Zhaoxin is definitely one of the companies that will help them achieve this. The Zhaoxin KaiXian KX 7000 has some pretty decent specs. 8 cores and 8 threads, which is more than enough for a modern CPU, although it doesn't have multi-threading like Intel and AMD CPUs would have. It has a boost clock of 3.6 GHz, well, at least for the CPU I have here anyway. I think some of the CPUs actually have slightly different clock speeds, weirdly enough. It has 4 MB of level 2 cache and 32 MB of level 3 cache. It supports DDR4 and DDR5 memory, PCI Express 4.0 with 24 PCIe lanes. And of course, for it to be a decent working CPU, we need all our important instruction sets like x86, x64, AVX, and AVX2. As the name suggests, this ASUS KX K700M D4 motherboard requires DDR4 memory. Although, as we just said, it does support DDR5 as well, but that would depend on your motherboard. So we will install 16GB of Micron 2666MHz DDR4 RAM as two 8GB sticks. It turns out that this motherboard is quite picky when it comes to RAM, which we'll talk about a bit later. So let's just line up the RAM and get that connected for the time being. Now we need a CPU cooler, and like the RAM, it's pretty easy not to use AMD, Intel or Nvidia here. I actually forgot to buy a cooler, so I'm going to use this Thermalright cooler from the test bench. Now you may be wondering which CPU cooler you can use on this motherboard, as it's a Zhaoxin socket. But luckily for us, they've actually kept it really simple by using the standard Intel LGA 1700 socket mount, so any LGA 1700 compatible cooler would work here. I guess it does make sense to use the same LGA 1700 mounting, as the socket is literally an LGA 1700 socket, but just not the exact same one that Intel uses. So now let's go ahead and install the CPU cooler. We can plug in the 4-pin fan connector, but as for the ARGB header, well, there's not really anywhere for that to go, so we won't be having any RGB lighting on our fan here. For the SSD, we can use any NVMe or SATA drive, as the motherboard does have an M.2 NVMe slot. I would imagine it's PCIe 4.0, but then again, it's kind of hard to find information about it. For this, however, I'm going to use a 2TB SATA SSD because it has my games in it already. It would actually be harder here to use Intel or AMD for storage. Like, I know Intel made quite a few SSDs, but apparently AMD also has a branded SSD as well. Like, I've never seen this before. Now time for the case. We've gone with the NZXT H5 Flow. No particular reason, but I think it was on sale at the time. It fits standard size ATX motherboards, so it might look a little big for our micro ATX board, but it should at least fit our graphics card, which is pretty long. For the power supply, we have the MSI Mag A650BN, and it's a fairly decent, but also decently priced 650 watt power supply. It's not modular, so it can be a bit difficult to work with, but it has all the connectors we need for our PC. So let's install our power supply and screw it into the case. To install our motherboard, we'll put in the I/O shield first, and some of those motherboard standoffs have to be moved from the case. After we've done that, we can screw in our motherboard. And you know what, it looks alright so far. The USB 3 header goes into the motherboard slot, along with the front panel audio, front panel connector, and USB-C. From our power supply, we connect our 24-pin and 4-pin CPU connector at the top. Our SSD plugs into the SATA port and SATA power connector. To get ready for our graphics card, we will remove the PCIe slot cover and the second and third expansion slots. And now it's time for our graphics card, which is not Intel, AMD or Nvidia. Here we have the Threads MTT S80. This is a fully Chinese graphics card, kind of like the Zhaoxin CPU in that sense. It was released back in 2022 and features some very good specs for the time. In fact, it was the first PCIe 5.0 card. The MTT S80 has 4096 Musa cores, which is Threads' version of CUDA cores basically. It has a GPU clock of 1.8 GHz, 16GB of GDDR6 memory, PCIe 5.0x16, and it also has a TDP of 255 watts, and that's given by a CPU 8-pin power connector. In the box we have an instruction sheet, the graphics card, and an 8-pin CPU to double 8-pin PCIe power adapter. And that's because for some reason this card uses a CPU 8-pin power connector to power the card, kind of like a server GPU. I'm not really sure why they did this. The build quality of the MTT S80 is actually very good, and it features this fully metal design. It's got a lot of weight to it. We have one HDMI and 3 display ports on the card, so plenty of I/O connectivity to connect multiple monitors. So we'll just line up our graphics card and slot that in and then screw it in. We will then connect the two 8-pin PCIe connectors from the power supply by using that adapter. Our no Intel, AMD or Nvidia PC is now finished. Let's turn it on and... It doesn't work. On closer inspection, after removing the graphics card, we can see we have a 2E error code. After some digging around, and thanks to the PC Watch article about the KX7000 CPU, apparently this motherboard will only boot with DDR4 3200MHz RAM, and it can't be 3200MHz overclocked memory either that uses XMP or the likes of it. It has to be native JEDEC standard 3200MHz RAM. So after a lot of searching, this is what I got. It's a single 16GB stick of Samsung workstation memory clocked at 3200MHz, and it is CL22 at 1.2 volts, which means this should be the correct standard of RAM for our motherboard. I could only get one because it was hard enough finding this one stick at a decent enough price due to the RAM shortage. That will mean that we'll be limited to single channel, but we'll take that into account during the benchmarks. So we're going to connect our new RAM stick, and then turn the PC on again. And there we go, we have a BioSoft BIOS screen, and it boots straight into Windows like a completely normal PC. Installing the drivers was kind of a pain because the Ethernet driver is not installed by default, so I had to get a USB stick and put the Motorcom driver onto that. However, once we got that installed, we can get the graphics driver from the MoreThreads website, and surprisingly enough, it installed without any problems. We can now see our MoreThreads MTT S80 in the PES utility. Other drivers can be obtained from Zhaoxin's website, like the integrated graphics driver, because yes, this CPU even has integrated graphics. So now everything should be working as expected. On GPU-Z, it correctly shows our MTT S80 and some of the specs. CPU-Z gives us more information about our KX7000. It shows us the instruction sets and our motherboard, which is running at PCIe 4.0. Task Manager also correctly displays our Zhaoxin KaiXian KX7000 and also our MTT S80. The BioSoft BIOS is very standard, but does have resize bar enabled by default. And that's a good thing because we actually need it for our MTT S80 to actually work. On the memory tab, we can see why we have so much trouble with the type of RAM we were using. Basically, it's set at 3200 megatransfers per second by default, and the other options are 1600 megatransfers per second. Not exactly very useful. For the first test, I ran the Geekbench benchmark, and we got a single core score of 789 and a multi-core score of 3344, which is actually not too bad. I mean, it's not good either, but honestly I didn't have high hopes for the Zhaoxin CPU. Just based off of this score alone, it's similar to that of the old i5s and i3s. It's a fair bit lower than the i5 7500, but kinda similar to the Ryzen 3 2300X. The latest version of Cinebench doesn't work for some reason, as it requires a CPU with the AVX2 instruction set, but the KX7000 does support AVX2, so I don't really understand that. Luckily, Cinebench R23 does work, and it gives us a multi-core score of 4432 and a single core score of 570. 3D Mark gave us a graphics score of 3682 and a CPU score of 3625, which doesn't seem too bad at all. Let's move on to some games now. For the GPU usage, we need to look in the top right, as MSI Afterburner doesn't show it. Luckily, the MoreThreads MTT S80 does support DirectX 12 now. When it first came out, it didn't support like half the games because DirectX 12 wasn't supported. But this still doesn't mean that all games work well, let's say. Forza Horizon 5 at 1080p looks like this, and it only gives us 24.2 FPS on average. The 1% and 0.1% lows were awful, at 18.5 FPS and 1.3 FPS respectively, and the game felt very stuttery. This low result is most likely caused by the MTT S80, as the card is still not well optimized in a lot of games. That's not to say the integrated graphics would be even better, they would probably be even worse, but if we had like an RTX 5070 or something paired with this CPU, I don't think the game would be too bad. Let's try Genshin Impact now. This game has had driver optimizations from MoreThreads, so hopefully the game should play a little better. I have the game on the lowest settings at 1080p with the FPS cap at 60. Here we get 58 FPS on average, which is decent, but unfortunately there is a lot of stuttering, even more so than Forza, with the 1% and 0.1% low being at 4.4 and 3.2 FPS respectively. Turning the game up to high decreased our average FPS to 53, but the 1% and 0.1% lows were still pretty bad at 2.4 and 2 FPS. Red Dead Redemption 2 didn't even want to start, and neither did Spider-Man Remastered. Cyberpunk sometimes started, and at low settings 1080p with no resolution scaling, we were able to get 22.3 FPS, and it actually didn't stutter that much at all. Shadow of the Tomb Raider at low settings 1080p was not even playable at 12.2 FPS and terrible stuttering. At the lowest settings it was slightly better at 21.3 FPS, but the 1% and 0.1% lows were still not great at 9.2 and 2.8 FPS. Resident Evil 3 usually runs pretty well on lower end hardware. Here we have the game on the low settings 1080p and it was fine at 44.7 FPS. Problem is the 1% and 0.1% lows were at 0.4 FPS, so that's not really ideal. Rocket League was actually pretty good. We have the game on high quality 1080p and we're achieving 67.7 FPS on average. The 1% and 0.1% lows were at 43.2 and 35.7 FPS respectively, and it felt pretty smooth throughout. GTA 5 at high settings 1080p was playable, but not great at 21.8 FPS on average. So I turned the settings down to normal and it was somewhat better at 26.8 FPS, with a 1% low of 1.8 and a 0.1% low of 1.5 FPS. If you could ignore the stuttering on occasions, then it wasn't too bad. CS2 was one of the worst games to play on this PC. In a competitive game like CS, you really need a high FPS, but here on low settings 1080p we got like 15 FPS, but what really made it impossible to play was the stuttering. You could barely even move at times. I finally tried Black Myth Wukong at 1080p low settings because apparently the MTT S80 has had driver optimizations for this game, and here we got 13.6 FPS on average, with a 1% and 0.1% low of 9 FPS. If this is the FPS with the optimizations, then I don't want to know what the game was like before. The game didn't stutter too much, but the FPS was way too low to actually have an enjoyable time playing the game. So overall, would I recommend the no Intel, AMD, and Nvidia PC? No, but at least there is an option to not use any of the three major CPU and GPU companies. I feel like our GPU, the Threads MTT S80, was holding our Zhaoxin CPU back in games, due to its bad driver optimizations. But then again, we can see the CPU scores, and the Zhaoxin CPU is still years behind the likes of Intel and AMD. I guess we'll just have to wait until the new CPUs and GPUs come out from Zhaoxin and Threads, to see if a no Intel, AMD, or Nvidia gaming PC will be possible for gaming. Thanks for watching.